So welcome to another episode of Orthodox Family Life. Today we have a really special guest, Jamie Hanshaw. Welcome to the show, Jamie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you. Why don't you start by first telling us a little bit about yourself and your channel?
My channel is called, the show's called Out of This World. You can find it by just my name, Jamie Hanshaw. And what we talk about is a lot of conspiracies. It's a tinfoil hat channel, let's put it that way. It's fun. That's how I was raised. That's kind of my background is conspiracy science, let's call it that. And for fun, I call myself Defense Against the Dark Arts Professor because our focus is on occultism in media. So mind control in pop culture, witchcraft, magic, all of those things. We talk a lot about Disney. We talk about the military industrial complex. We talk about Hollywood mind control. I have 3 books about mind control in media called Operation Culture Creation. So there's a start. I have a secret channel on Rockfin where we go really deep into black magic. I call that Defense Against the Dark Arts class because it's not for everyone. It's for mature audiences only. And we just.
So how did you get into all that though? Like that's quite a topic.
Yeah. Okay. I was raised kind of unconventionally. I was homeschooled. So I was allowed to set my own curriculum and pursue my own interests and do a lot of reading on my own. I did go to elementary school when I was young, but I just didn't really fit in. I guess today you would call it like neurodivergent or something like that. It's just the entire idea of school just did not click with me. From getting up early, I mean, I've been like that since I was a young child, to the rigid structures, to the relating to other children. I was not very good at that. So my parents were like, let's just let her do her own thing because she doesn't require very much discipline and she's very studious and like a bookworm anyways. So they just allowed me to study what I wanted, and also on top of that, they were very free-spirited, creative people. The materials coming through our home were very out there. Lots of like back in the day, you had authors who would write about witchcraft, cartoons, and stuff like that. I was exposed to a lot of exorcism material for some reason, just the yeah and then also conspiracy stuff. So we would go down to like the Bible bookstore and rent these VHS tapes, and they would have wacky stuff on them about like FEMA camps and the Clintons and their scandals. And so I grew up having this idea that like reality is way more complicated than what you're gonna find in like the mainstream media or school or university. So that's kind of where my education came from.
That's really unique. I guess I always thought when I heard you say that that you grew up in it, I thought you meant maybe you had grown up in the occult and then come out of it, but you just mean you've been a student of it this whole time?
Yes. So interesting. My family was very strict Baptist, and then when I grew up, and then I kept on researching like conspiracies, and so at that time what was being put out was things like Zeitgeist and David Icke, and it kind of broke down a lot of my conceived notions about like what America is about. And then I was like, well, if this is all untrue, then maybe, Christianity is untrue. So you start following these threads, like, and there's plenty of researchers out there who try to tell you, Jesus is made up or whatever, this, that, and the other. So you're kind of just like starting from scratch when you pierce through the veil of what's going on, and you have to build it back up. So I was raised Christian. I went through a time in my life where I was just starting over from nothing. Like, what is the truth, right? And I want to build it up from the ground up and not just like latch on to what I've been told my whole life. So I just started reading lots of hermetic things, lots of my. At the same time, I was looking at mind control. So I also had the idea that a lot of this magic and occult stuff was used for nefarious things, right? It wasn't all love and light like they want you to believe. So then I started trying to, separate the good from the bad. Like, well, there's white magic and there's black magic, and that's different. And the deeper you study into that, you just find out no, it's really all the same thing. And Christ is the only light of the world, and there's only one path that we need to be on, and all the other things are just like tangents and diversions, and will not bring you any kind of like peace, prosperity, happiness, joy, any of those fruits of the spirit. It like the occult and magic realm is just such a labyrinth that never goes anywhere,
Mm.
right? And I've known people personally that spend their whole lives trying to become some kind of magus, magician, grand poobah, Freemason, or whatever. And they just waste their entire life on earth trying to attain something that is false. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it sounds like what the devil wants people to do. Kind of chase their own tail and get deeper and deeper into,
And
into
and
nonsense. And it's harder to get out probably after you've spent a lifetime in it.
oh yeah, and like it's like magic is like a carrot on a stick. You're never going to reach it. You're never going to become this like grand spiritual wizard being that you think you're working towards, this
Mm.
alchemical creation. It's always just another hallway to go down.
Mm.
There's no destination to it, right? And when you are down in life, like everyone will be at some point, they're going to be at the bottom, rock bottom. My magic books weren't helping me. Kabbalah wasn't helping me. Hermetics wasn't helping me. Um, Hedonism wasn't
Hmm.
helping me. So that's kind of where I was at in my life when I found the Orthodox Church, that did help me. And when my 1,000 book library of all of the ancient secrets of the past did not do squat
Mm.
for my mental condition, uh, my joy, my life, my prosperity, not my relationships, nothing. So that's kind of the overarching outline of how I ended up where I am now.
Well, it's a really interesting history, and I'd love to maybe ask you a little bit about what did your parents think through all that? You said that they were Baptist, so
Mm-hmm.
was that difficult, or did they know what was going on?
I was already older and moved out of the house before I stopped going to church, so it didn't really impact them. I moved from California to Texas, so I was already like 25, 30.
Okay.
Um,
So not a young
but
child getting into this stuff.
no, no,
Okay.
they've always been real proud of, and like they always joke about how they never had to punish me or anything like that, so they don't worry about me too much.
Okay, well, great. So yeah, one of the things I love about your channel is that you do have just a wealth of information and knowledge about these topics. And so I really wanted to know what would be like some of your big takeaways from what parents should know in this general realm.
What parents should know is that child's entertainment is completely co-opted as far as what you see on main channels now. I'm not talking about little YouTube channels, but the big ones can be also brought into this. But
Mm.
um, So let's start with Disney. Disney is a military industrial corporation disguised as entertainment for children, right? Walt Disney was part of the FBI. He worked very closely with scientists and with military. He worked with ex-Nazi Werner von Braun to introduce like ideas about space and aliens into the public and into children's minds. Um, so basically, right after World War II, uh, the Disney studio was commandeered by the US military and put into production of propaganda films. So 90% of their labor and their workforce was for producing cartoons for soldiers to learn, like just training videos and stuff
Hmm.
like that, but animated by Walt Disney. And you can find all of these, they're archived in a DVD set called Walt Disney on the Front Lines. So if you're interested in the World War II Disney propaganda, that's a good place to start. But not only that, they were producing propaganda films for adults as well. So, like, um, let's take the IRS, for example. During World War II, not a lot of people were filing their federal income tax because it wasn't really that big of a deal yet. And then they made a cartoon called The New Spirit where Donald Duck teaches you how to pay your taxes and that it's so important. And they made the slogan, taxes to beat the axes, right? And so now
Oh,
Donald Duck's,
Axis. Okay.
and this actually worked. Like it bumped up everyone paying into their federal income tax for the war effort now. And then they just like never stopped doing that. There's cartoons that feature Minnie Mouse saving her bacon grease so that they can, mail it into the ammunitions factory and they can make bombs and stuff like this. So the idea of cartoons and children's animation is very specific in how training new generations to go in directions that they want them to go. So, and if you research things like we have, you'll realize that the wars are not started uh, organically on the spot by like tempers flaring. World wars and things like this, and conflicts are planned out maybe 20, 30 years before. And this is when they start putting in to children's media who the bad guys are, right? So if they want to go to war with, let's say, Iraq or Afghanistan, 20 years before that, it's going to be all terrorism, bombs. Arabs are the bad guys. Now it's Russians. We've been seeing for a
Hmm.
long, long time. Even in movies, like action movies, you can tell like who is going to be the bad guy. Oh, it's going to be a Russian, right?
Hmm.
And now look where we are in conflicts with Russia. So they insert and train children from when they're very young. One of my books features what I call princess warrior programming. When in the early 2000s, they took all of the Disney princesses and made them its own thing and sold it to girls as like, now you want to be a princess, but what does that mean? Well, according to Disney, it's just a costume, right? It's just
Hmm.
it has nobility or how you treat people or anything like it's about you put on a princess tiara and a wand and a dress and you have all of your needs met for you while you act like a brat.
Hmm.
And then for the boys, you have like obviously the military programming. So everything for boys is a war, it's a gun, it's a truck, it's a tank, it's a karate chop, right? There's no
Hmm.
STEM in there for little boys. There's no science, engineering, technology. It's all like warrior programming. So this was in the early 2000s. Right now, we're seeing more of a like androgynous push. So I wrote three books and I didn't publish the third one because I wasn't done with it yet. And then life got in the way. I didn't really finish it. But that book was going to be all about how we're going into androgyny. And this is what we were
Hmm.
talking 2015 before anybody even like heard of transgender or anything like that. We were like, okay, so Baphomet is a god that they revere. He's a symbol of the alchemical process. Have you heard of this guy?
I don't think so. Say his name again. What was the name?
Baph
I'm sorry, you keep breaking up.
Baphomet.
Oh, yes, then I have heard that. Yeah, yeah.
Let me see if I can pull up a picture for you. He's the goat
Right, right.
uh, with the
With a boy
boobs.
and girl, usually, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I've seen
right.
that.
So this is the symbol of their union of opposites in alchemy and magic, because he's half man, half beast. He's half divine, half terrestrial, half man, half woman. So he's all of these things together.
Mm.
And so back then, when we were talking about Princess Warrior conspiracies, we were watching how there was going to be a push towards androgyny because Lucifer is androgynous and Baphomet. In
Mm.
I don't know what the actual Orthodox Church, like the teaching about Lucifer and Satan. We haven't really gone over that in catechism or anything, but in the occult, Lucifer can be a man or a woman.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever heard of angels having a gender. Now that you
Right.
say that,
So,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, Lucifer is bi. He's genderless. He's worshipped in that way. And here is a picture of that guy. If you can see that, right?
yeah, yeah. We see that more and more now in several different, news stories coming out. It's
And this,
interesting.
yeah.
It was interesting to me that you said 2015 when
Hmm.
you were talking about this, because that's when the transgender stuff definitely came across um, my screen because we had a situation where my kids were going to summer camp, Orthodox summer camp, and I'm homeschooler, so I don't really let my kids go places without me. So I signed up to be the cabin mom for the high school girls, and and so I was there with two of my kids were in that cabin. Spent a week with the girls, which they were all lovely, but what I noticed is they started calling each other. They made up names for each other, all male names.
Hmm.
And at first, I didn't really realize what was happening. But as the week went on, they told me, well, it's called gender bending, right? And these
Hmm.
kids were from a pretty liberal area in California. So this stuff has been around for a while. And I think I used to, try to tell my friends about it, like, there's this weird thing happening. Or I think campus reform was also on the forefront of a lot of these issues, talking about what was happening in the colleges and being taught there, and as
Yeah.
far as demonstrations on campuses go. But a lot of people weren't listening back then. So, do you find that people are more readily listening to all of your crazy conspiracy truths? Because
Actually,
10 years ago, people, I mean, they thought I was crazy. And I think now, because we come to a lot of the same conclusions, though, through a different path. Um,
yeah. I do think it's a little more mainstream now
mhm.
because people will come back to me and tell me things that I told them 10 years ago. I'm like, yeah, I know. I told you that. It's a funny place to be because I've always been like that my whole life. Just in a different headspace, and it's hard for me to come down, and not hard, but it's lonely. Let's put it that way.
Hmm. I
Right,
understand
because
that, sure.
I can socialize with people where they're at, but it just it's disheartening when you can't get through that these things are damaging your children.
Hmm.
Going to Disney World, paying all this money, Disney movies. Not that there's not some wholesome ones, but there is an insidious underlying current of witchcraft
Hmm.
in Disney, and then Harry Potter came out, and
Yeah.
then magic just exploded on the scene for millennials. Um, and if you study magic at all, like the real dusty books that you go to Oxford in England and pull off the shelf and read and write like we did, um, magic is inherently sexual.
Mm.
So if you're teaching kids magic wands, spells, enchantment, stuff like that, when you actually get to the nitty gritty of it, all magic is based on sexuality. And that's where the most powerful, that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck is using that in your spells. Now, you can do what they call high magic, ceremonial magic, does not require sex acts or anything like that. But if you want to have any sort of uh, what would I call results
Mm.
in magic, then you're going to have to go down that route. And so, training up children to be magicians, to study magic, is actually kind of grooming in a way because a wand
Hmm.
is for his phallus.
Oh, oh
Right.
dear. Okay.
That's his magic wand in reality. So this goes very deep into secret societies and into like, the Illuminati, into Freemasonry. Um, and all of these are in the kit with
Hmm.
your magician.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult, because ask a simple question and we can start going down, and it's connected with Masons and this, this demon, and good, keep going, and I think for parents that maybe aren't aware, it's overwhelming. They're like, well, wait a second, it's just a kid's movie, right? It's just a kid's toy. And that's something I've tried to talk a lot with parents about, is that we're not talking about one or two unsavory items or movies. We're talking about a tidal wave or a constant drip on your kids with this stuff. It's
Um,
everywhere.
yeah, and I don't know if this is true today, but at one point, very recently, Walt Disney was the biggest multimedia conglomeration in the world with branches in every sector from travel, cruise lines,
Hmm.
magazines, hotels, theme parks,
Yeah, birth to
merchant.
grave kind of marketing,
Yes,
really.
yes,
Yeah.
birth to grave marketing, exactly. Like you can have Mickey Mouse on your pacifier and
Hmm.
uh, brats and dolls and stuff like that. So it's very pervasive, and these concepts of magic didn't just like pop out of Fantasia or whatever. These are very ancient. If you study magic, a lot of the source material they will attribute to actually King Solomon. Um, and the lore of the Freemasons goes all the way back to, Hiram of Tyre of ancient Phoenicia. So
Oh, okay, I
this
didn't
isn't
know that.
something that came about in, like the 1800s. This is and what we do is we trace it back all the way to, the beginning of recorded history. So my new book that I'm working on, the first chapter starts out in, Sumer,
Hmm.
Mesopotamia, the Levant, when we had the very first writing, the very first cities. And this magic that we see today has come all the way from, Uruk in Babylon and the beginning of, recorded history.
And that's why I think another reason why your work is so important, Jamie, is that because you've done the work and you've studied it, then when you see it mimicked in a children's movie or book like Harry Potter, you can
Mm-hmm.
tell people this isn't just like a made up magic thing. Like they're actually using what I think I hear you saying is like real symbols, the real language of the real deal, right? And
Mm-hmm.
parents were totally gaslit. My kids were young when Harry Potter came out, and there was a lot of pressure on us to let them read it. We were in a conservative kind of Protestant circle of homeschooling. We were the only Orthodox people there, but so it was less than I think a lot of people got. But I remember the marketing and people talking about it, saying, you're not going to turn them into wizards. It's just for fun. But that's exactly what we saw a few years later. Books about spells coming out that were,
Mm-hmm.
Harry Potter theme. And now, if you go on Amazon, I mean, there's just a plethora of books on how to do spells for kids. That wasn't there before Harry Potter.
Right.
And people need to, I'm not that old. I mean, this has only been, 15 years, 10 years total, right? We saw the
Mm-hmm.
whole arc.
Mm-hmm.
We were told, you're crazy if you think this is going to affect your kids and they're all going to become witches. Fast forward 15 years, we have, witch talk. And, this stuff is everywhere. Like, I really think that was from Harry Potter normalizing um, the material for young kids and getting
Oh,
parents used to it.
yeah. And what's funny is like witches, you brought up witch talk. So they think that witchcraft is super ancient, but it's not. So modern Wicca only came around in like the 1950s from this guy named Gerald Gardner, who was just some like a nutty nudist who wanted to, see naked women and slap their butts.
Oh
And
dear.
yeah, and so he made up this whole religion called Wicca, which is what a lot of women latch onto because it's very female friendly, because it was co-opted by the feminist movement as like the official religion of their feminism. So they think that they are like subverting the patriarchy by going back to nature and getting uh, power from 1,000 years ago. But Wicca is very new and it was made up by some pervert,
Mhm.
and so it's not doing what you think it's doing.
Is
But you
it
are messing with real demons. So
is it kind of a gateway you think for the the more serious stuff, or it's still serious in its own right?
oh it is serious and it's not. So it will work on the same plane as like voodoo or folk magic or whatever, like demons are hanging around trying to help you. Um, they do a lot of work with like nature spirits and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. So it sounds very nice. It sounds very, they talk in the language of healing and crystals and peace and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. But it's just another trap. So it's just, like you said, it's a gateway into heavier stuff. And so now you're a witch, now you're a Wiccan, now that you're going to be approached maybe to join like the OTO or something like that, which is a sex magic cult, which is just going to be abusing you anyways. And this is what I found out when I was in my like breakdown phase of what is true or not, is like most gurus and spiritual leaders and yogis and like teachers, mystical teachers, are just pervert guys who just want a harem of women. They just want to be a cult leader. They want to heal you with their magic phallus. I'm thinking of people like Osho, and the bigger ones always get caught out in some kind of um, spy tapping, wiretapping. It always goes deeper, but just for what we're talking about right now, women are deceived into thinking this guy's some kind of spiritual leader when all he just wants is a harem, right?
Yeah, that's
A lot
actually
of
I haven't done a lot of reading on this. It's not a a background that I've had personally, but if you read I think it's Saint Paisios, the guru and the young man, it's exactly what happens with the guru in India. He has this whole
Mhm.
ashram and he's just trying to kind of collect women and others. But
And the Mormon is like that too. Any kind of like splinter cult with a head as just one man,
mhm.
it's usually always just going to be him targeting young women to make his wives or his
Y-
concubines, whatever.
yeah, I mean, I guess if you kind of zoom back and you think about it in terms of, this is all different demonic powers. One way they can entrap people is to make them impure through these different sexual acts, right? You lose something, you lose your purity, you lose your
Well,
connection to
what's
God through this stuff. So it would it makes sense.
definitely, and it's so interesting because what they talk about in occult literature is that they are spirits that you can't see that are monitoring you, and they can feed off of your sexual energy. So when you're alone and you're with your laptop, a guy alone with his laptop, there are
Mm,
other beings there feeding off that. Now, I haven't really talked about this to any priest or anything, but it's like there's seems to be a protection when a couple are married and they're having intimacy. There's like a sacredness around that where other unclean spirits cannot participate in that, but anything outside of that is free territory for them. Now, this is coming from what I read in the occult, not
mm.
uh, from the church, but it makes sense to me. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be a good question for a priest, not for me, but I think it sounds right what you're saying. So, just a little bit more on this topic, and then I do want to actually move on to women and marriage and young men. But what are your thoughts on families celebrating Halloween? This is a big topic every year this time of year. It's September
Mhm.
right now. It's late September. We're already seeing the decorations in the stores, and I was a kind of a crazy mom. I didn't let my kids actually go to the store during October at all because the decorations and costumes and everything was so terrifying, and I didn't want those images in their head, so they just stayed home. Um,
Mhm.
also didn't take them to the grocery store because I didn't want them going by all the magazines, right? A kid is learning to read, and then they have, Vogue there,
Mhm.
5 new hot tips for the bedroom. It's like, yeah, I don't need my 5-year-old who's just learning to read, reading
Mhm.
that and seeing, this very sexualized woman on the cover. So those are the kind of things I was looking for. But what do you think about Halloween?
I was not allowed to go trick or treating when I was young. When I grew up and was out of the house, the first thing I did was get a costume and be Alice in Wonderland as a 25-year-old and try and go trick or treating just to see what I was missing out on. But then I learned a lot about actually what Halloween is. So it is it's a pagan holiday called Samhain, and supposedly on November 1st is when the veil between Earth and the spirit world is the thinnest. So that's why it's called All Hallows Eve, and then the Day of the Dead is November 1st. So,
Is this connected with like Europe and Catholicism?
yes.
Okay.
So, Ireland, England, UK, those places, this is where we get our Halloween, right? And it was celebrated, with the debauchery, with sacrifices, with so that's one of the things you're going to learn if you start studying like occult. This is connected to human sacrifice, and they even say like the young male child is the best sacrifice you can get because blood is very powerful when you spill it. So Halloween is connected with that. When you read things, testimonies from people who have been satanically ritual abused under mind control and the Monarch program and things like that, they are all going to tell you this Halloween is very important to them, uh, because holidays are ritual torture days for victims because they can, if you attach a torture to a specific day, then it's going to re-traumatize them because they know that's going to come around the cycle again. Like every Halloween, I know this is something bad's going to happen to me. So for SRA victims, Halloween is terrible. For occultists, it's a very hallowed day of communing with the dead and the spirits on the other side. So if this is anything you want to avoid, like, don't let your children participate in this. And just the entire sexual debauchery that has been placed on it now, like, this is just
Mm-hmm.
maybe since the 90s. Like, every costume for little girls is sexualized, right? If you want to be a nurse, it's slutty nurse. You want to
Right.
be right.
Mm-hmm. Not an
School,
actual
it's
nurse, who knows how to do things, but
yeah,
yeah.
Playboy schoolgirl. Every single costume for a woman is just some sort of fetish fantasy, right? Um, yeah, I would not recommend having anything to do with Halloween whatsoever. It's not fun in games for a lot of people. I know people try and keep it innocent with their pumpkins and stuff, but you have to remember where all these things come from, what they symbolize, and most of the time it's connected to child sacrifice and demonism.
Yeah, and you don't have to, explain all that to your children. It is hard. I know when my kids were young and most of their Protestant friends were doing it, usually like a trunk or treat at a church. And, they had all
Mm-hmm.
these kind of parameters, nothing scary, nothing satanic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's that little space where, okay, if you want to do that, I guess my opinion is always like you're just opening the door for something because once they're teenagers, right, things are just
Mm-hmm.
different. There's a different dynamic there. it's always, and I think this is something you're kind of alluding to, it always goes deeper and darker. Like it doesn't ever just stay at that little innocent level of something. It can escalate.
And just on the very surface, the treats and the sugar is terrible for children's health and development. I mean, all of the dyes. It's not
Hmm.
just sweet treats. It's chemicals and it's red dye and it's
Yeah.
genetically modified this. And so they're just getting a bag of poison dressed up like a demon.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree, but it is hard for people if they're coming at it for the first time to put it so bluntly. I don't know if I should share this story, but one of my children, they were very young. And again, we had people in our life that were celebrating and we had to tell them we're not. And we're like, well, they're asking why. It's like, well, it's kind of, no, very young, like 4 years old, maybe. Well, they knew what feast days were for saints. So I was like, well, it's kind of like the feast day for the devil. So we just
Yeah,
don't, we're not going to have candy. We'll maybe even fast, but we'll have candy on another day. And they had lots of dress up clothes. I could always dress up as different, historical figures or something at home. So we're at the grocery store, and of course the cashier asks this child if they want a piece of candy. And of course, if you say something like this to your child, they're going to repeat it. So in the sweetest little voice, no, thank you. It's the devil's feast day. And I just went, oh my God. Okay, kids can only take so much. Like, we got to work on what to share and what not to share, maybe publicly, because I don't need CPS, showing up over this. But,
right.
kids are so pure. They're like, well, of course we wouldn't do this, right? This is about the devil. Um,
Yeah.
so,
Well, even Anton LaVey, who's the high priest of the Church of Satan, or the creator of the Church of Satan in 1966, he loved Halloween. He said he appreciates that because it gets kids introduced to the idea of worshiping the devil.
mhm. And that's what we keep coming back to over and over. It's easy as a parent to say, okay, well, it's just a Disney movie, it's just The Little Mermaid or whatever, but it's normalizing certain things, and that's only escalating, and it's everywhere. Once can recognize it, it's everywhere. That's kind of what I've come to believe.
And in a way, my job is getting a little harder because it used to be if you pointed out, let's say, witchcraft in a Disney movie, people were like, oh, wow, I never
Hmm.
saw it that way. That's bad. But now we have the extra added task of proving why is witchcraft even bad?
Yeah. So I went to Cabrillo College in Santa Cruz County in probably 96 or 7 for their early childhood education program. And it's actually where they developed the anti-bias curriculum was being developed there at that time. So I could tell you a lot of stories about them, but one story was we were talking about how to appropriately display, make classroom displays for certain holidays, and how, of course, Christmas was out because, Christians and all. But even witches were out. And when we were asked, like, why do you think you shouldn't put witches up for Halloween? And I'm thinking, because it's a witch. I mean, but no, the answer was because there really are witches, and this would offend them to make light of
Right.
it. And witches are a, perfectly reasonable religion. I think, okay, that's mid 90s. This has been going on for quite a while. And of course, now that has permeated education where you're not, the whole thing about, what is it, Arthur Miller's, is it The Crucible, about witchcraft and the Salem witch trials,
Uh huh.
right? That to me, that feels like a huge gaslighting event. Like the opening scene is them all out in the forest doing witchcraft. But the rest of the
Right.
book is they're not doing witchcraft, everybody. Calm down. It's like, well, actually, the first scene, that's exactly what it was, right?
Yeah.
So,
E- yeah, that's an interesting story because a lot of times when you look at like witch hunts of the Catholic Church and the Inquisition and stuff like that, um, it's even deeper because it was actually the witches who were persecuting other people and scapegoating them
mm,
at times. So real witches were accusing innocent people of witchcraft, and they burned that person at the stake to take the spotlight away from them. So a lot of crazy stuff going on.
Yeah, let's just not maybe talk about witches with kids. Let's just like let's give them the lives of the saints and like fill them with holiness, which is actually my last question on this topic. Do you ever find it difficult to research and to be aware of um, so many dark topics? Like I ask this because personally, I'm just very sensitive to different, dark topics. It's really heavy for me. I have a hard time kind of putting it aside. But also in our Orthodox faith, like everything we see, everything we hear, everything we experience, we believe like affects us, right? And so this is just my own personal struggle to figure out what is the appropriate amount of knowledge I need to have about this so that I can be a good parent, right? Because we have to know what's going on.
Yeah.
But like, where's that line for me? And I think it's different for different people. Like obviously with what the work that you do, which I think is very valuable, you have to know more, right, than most of us. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do not recommend studying it on your own. Just especially when you get into the real stuff. Okay, so I did a couple shows about an author named Kenneth Grant, and he was the disciple of Aleister Crowley, and he wrote some magic books that were very dense, very technical. Like the glossary was all Sanskrit words, right? Because this is
Mm.
how serious this magic they're taking it. And I learned a lot from that, but it does put you in a very dark place. Um, Even having some of these books,
Mm-hmm.
I wish I didn't, but I guess I've been not desensitized, but I've got the been through the boot camp basically. This stuff doesn't scare me anymore. I've made my peace with whatever happens to me in this life. I'm not scared of people coming after me. I'm not scared of demons really. The only thing I'm scared of at this point is God's judgment. um, but not everybody has to have all the details, but I think it would be helpful if most adults had the overall picture, the big picture of the
Mm-hmm.
agenda, right? And that's what
Yeah.
I'm continually trying to like grab people by the lapels and be like, this is evil, right? Don't do this to your kids. And that's why my books, so I don't sell the first one anymore because I wrote it before I became Orthodox. And it had a lot of syncretism in it and just me trying to whitewash occultism and trying to take the good, separate the good from the bad.
Mm.
So I don't sell that one anymore, but I made them like full color, like pictures. It's in the magazine format. It's got all the pop stars. And that's, I have these two books for sale still because there was nothing too heretical in there. But I, I used the pop stars and the children's movies as the gateway to explaining this because we can go into, adult conspiracies like the Federal Reserve or 9/11 or FEMA camps or Monsanto, the food. Like there's all of these practical ones that you can see very clearly. There's conspiracy happening here, but the occult is a little more difficult to explain, and that's why I use pop culture and children's media
Mm-hmm.
to show things, right?
Yeah, I love that. I love those are two. They're just so important. And actually, I'd like to share with you one thing that I talked about on my talk, the normalization of evil in children's media or maybe books. But at some point, I switch over to movies. One particular movie because um, it's a little easier to see in this example, and that's Maleficent. Have you ever seen this
Mm-hmm.
movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so it's just like you really only have to watch the trailer. But this came out when my kids were about the age to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just explain to parents, like, look, this is, first of all, it's an evil wingless angel, right? A fairy, right? A fallen angel whose name means intending harm. Uh, she has horns. I mean, she looks literally like Satan. She meets a girl in the garden, right? Tells the girl,
Hmm.
I'm your real friend, and the king lied to you. Right? I mean, it's the story of Adam and Eve in the
She,
garden. It's Eve in the garden.
yes. She's a fallen angel against the patriarchy,
Mm-hmm.
right? She does look like the Baphomet character very much.
Yeah.
Angelina Jolie is a trip by herself. If you study Hollywood like Jay and I do, she's very well connected to what we would consider the Illuminati in Hollywood, and actually works for the UN and uh, does a lot of goodwill ambassador touring, and which is usually a cover for espionage and stuff like that. So yeah, Maleficent, and the now we're seeing that it's going to be cool to be a villain,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
Before, everyone, I'm the good guy versus the bad guy, and we defeat evil. But I think even the Disney theme park is going to be developing a land, an area in the theme park of villains,
Well, there's a
villains
lot of
land.
villain movies now. I just watched
Mm-hmm.
Cruella for the first time because it's the same
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing that, the villain backstory. And, I think the whole point is so that you are sympathetic to the villain.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the,
Despicable
the
Me.
flipped archetypes.
Exactly. It's the flipped archetypes, and what they call in the occult the externalization of the hierarchy. So where they have been doing things in secret all of these years, all of these things will be brought to light and actually applauded. Like there's some great white brotherhood who's been keeping these witchcraft secrets all of these years, and now we're finally ready to hear it. But it's just the sympathetic identification with the villain now that a lot of kids are going to be going for.
So, I really want to commend you for your work in this because you do really deep dives. But if parents even just tackle one or two topics, I think it'll open their eyes and help them to see it. Like I said, everywhere, we're talking about the villains. Does anyone ever wonder why we have bad Anakin on all the backpacks and lunchboxes? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a thing. Why would you want Darth Vader, right? But he starts off as a
well,
young, cute kid, and then, the middle movie is really disturbing. And then he's the
well, since
villain.
you yeah, Star Wars. So, in a lot of occultist minds, there is no such thing as good and evil.
Hmm.
There is only yourself, and the magician transcends good and evil, right? He uses good for what is good for him, or he uses evil for what is good for him. So, in their mind, there is no like judgment or punishment. We're all just recycled in some kind of cosmic soup and then born again in a reincarnation way. So it doesn't really matter what we do. Uh, and a villain is just some archetype to use to get to your own goals, because a lot of Satanists, they don't actually believe in Satan. They just are like atheists who believe that Satan stands for the
Hmm.
will to power,
Yeah.
Nietzschean idea, right? Um, so, oh, Star Wars. Okay, so the Force, is neither good or bad. It's just a balance. It's a very Eastern
Hmm.
mystic way to think about life and death. And so it's not about good overcoming evil in Star Wars. It's just about keeping this balance.
Right. Bring balance to the force. That was the whole point, right, of Darth
Yeah.
Vader. Yeah. So, I just want to encourage all the parents out there or grandparents to go and find your channel and at least do, one or two deep dives into something. And I think it'll really put things into perspective. But let's pivot a little bit to another topic I think I hear you talk a lot about, which is men and women, the red pill guys. What's going on with this? What is this? Can you maybe just start by explaining for my audience what is the red pill movement?
Okay, well, because it started as something else. Um, Red Pill comes from the Matrix, where Morpheus offers Neo the blue or the red one, and if you take the red one, you wake up knowing the truth, right? You wake up from the Matrix, and now you know nature of reality, and you are ascended to another level of consciousness, right? So we would use this back in the day, like maybe 10, 15 years ago. Have you taken the red pill? Do you know about Federal Reserve? Do you know about lobbying? Do you know about chemtrails? Right? Whatever was going. So it was a conspiracy theorist word that came from the Matrix, and then somehow became about masculinity and this masculinity movement. So the first time I ever heard about MGTOW was at least like 2010 or 2012, so very long ago now.
What is that? I've heard
Um,
the term, but I don't know what that is.
MGTOW, it was just like men. It was stands for men going their own way. So it
Oh,
was disenfranchised men saying, I don't want to participate in society as it is because I have a lot of trouble with women. I have a lot of trouble with relationships. Um, no women are worthy of me. Just a lot of ideas about shutting down uh, anything that has to do with pursuing a family or a
hmm.
marriage. But they couldn't do that because men need women. Okay, so MGTOW became just griping about women all the time, and so they've decided to eschew them and go their own way and not have anything to do with them. But all they can do is get online and talk about them all day, right?
It's really
But that's
sad.
not really going your own
Yeah.
way, is it? Um, no, we're just talking about the masculine side of this right now. So this became dating. What do you call it? Pickup artist. So now you have guys who don't want to lose half their stuff in a divorce, but they still want to have sex and they still want to be in the company of women sometimes, right? Um, so you go to these pickup artists, and the pickup artists are teaching you all of these techniques to get women into bed the fastest, right? And so this became kind of the focus. Is like, well, we just rack up bodies instead of investing in a, a loving relationship. We just go through women like tissues, literally,
Hmm.
and at the same time. And I've, perused several of these. I haven't read a full one yet, but pickup artist books, and a lot of these tips actually, it blew my mind because these are mind control techniques straight out of occult books that I read many years prior. Things like hot and cold. Okay, this is like the narcissist 101. This is mind control 101. This is how to make someone your undetectable slave, is to use hot and cold behavior. It's a very
Hmm.
traumatizing thing. I love you one day, I don't call you the next. And this is what this does to the victim, or the woman in this case, is it puts her in this place of like, oh my gosh, does he like me? Does he not like me? And she's obsessed with it. So in her mind, she's thinking, well, I must really love him because I can't stop thinking about him. But it's only because they used these mental techniques to get you into a place where they have all of the power, basically. So that's just one of them. Hot and cold. Another one's called dread game, where you insult your partner or you triangulate them and try and make them believe that they could be replaced at any moment. So, a man who's trying to manipulate a woman to do something would say, well, I've got, other women who are happy to do this with me if you don't want to. So, a lot of these techniques, I don't know if this was on purpose, but they came straight from literally monarch mind control. So now you've got MGTOW, you've got your pickup artists. Um, then in creeps people like, I don't want to name names just because they're all on social media,
I
like,
think we all know who you're referring to.
well,
Or the big
rational
one.
men. Yeah, the big one, Andrew Tate, I don't care about him, but so you've got books coming out about like men are more rational, right,
Hmm.
and women are and they can't make decisions because they're just a basket of hormones, and men are just logical Spock angels, right? And so they should make all the decisions because they always know what's right. And so the red pill's starting to become very misogynist and very disrespectful of women,
Hmm.
which I'm like, how can you even as an Orthodox person like be so disrespectful when you have Theotokos, when we have so many women saints, when we have Mary Magdalene, we have the myrrh-bearing women, we have like half of our saints are women. So you're literally disrespecting like the mother of God by saying all women are this or all women are, and that came out of the red pill too. So there's this acronym called AWALT, which is all women are like that, which is all
Oh,
women are uh, deceitful, hypergamous, which means they will always go for a better man if they have the opportunity, which is not true. Just all these things about women's characters that are just simply not true.
yeah.
So not
Oh, yeah. And we can,
sorry.
we can go and talk about the women in a minute. And I'd like to, but yeah, it's really disturbing, this shift that you mentioned, that I've felt it in the last like year,
Mhm.
of the guys being, there's just this kind of underlying aggression. And I don't know how else to explain it, but it's concerning. And of course, you're describing a movement that is, in the culture in general, but let's talk about specifically Orthodox guys. Do you think this is coming into Orthodoxy because there's young guys who are red pilled who then are converting? Or are there like guys that are just Orthodox and they're also kind of buying into this? Or do you think a little bit of both?
Both. Yeah. It's so insidious too
Hmm.
because the red pill tries to stand for traditional things but their entire praxeology, they call it, is based on evolutionary biology, which we do not believe in evolution, right? We don't believe that men evolved to just spread their seeds in some
Hmm.
kind of panspermia into any field that happens to come along and they can't help themselves, right?
Right.
We believe men have free will and they are capable of righteousness and holiness and making the right decisions and being godly.
Are you finding Orthodox men that are holding that opinion of like men should have several women?
Not specifically Orthodox guys, but Christian guys can be influenced in this way because everybody wants to hear that their sin is not that bad,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone wants to hear
That's a good
what
point.
they did. Everyone does it, so it's okay.
It's
Um,
natural.
it's natural. Yes,
Yeah.
don't beat yourself up.
Hmm.
Um, but okay, this is so crazy. And I told you this on the phone, but so I've been going up against witches, Satanists, New World Order, Illuminati, globalists, um, all of the villains, right, for 20 years, let's say. And how many times have I ever been sent a horrible quote or an email or a comment um, from that side? Zero. I've never got any negative pushback or feedback like, I'm a witch and you suck. Nothing like that. Right? um, but I told one funny story on Twitter just about a guy who
The spiders.
flubbed. Yes, he flubbed a chance to talk to a girl by bringing up spiders, and it's just funny, right?
Well,
It's
I
just
I have to
cute.
interrupt you and tell you I told this to my husband, and
Uh
he's like,
huh.
"Well, that's a perfectly good question. Like, what kind of spider did he like?" I mean, my husband's an engineer. He's very Mr. Spock like, so he thought
Yeah.
I would want to
Well,
know that.
let's not go into autism right now, but for a 20-year-old girl being asked that
Yeah,
question by a guy is just kind of like, what are you, my little brother? And that's not, whatever.
not a great starter.
Yeah. um but I got so much hateful comments by guys with crosses in their bios telling me, I hate you, I hope you have the worst life ever, you're a whore, you're a,
Oh
this
dear.
is why you're gonna die alone.
Mm.
Just the worst things you could possibly comment to somebody. And I'm like, damn, man, something has switched in young men's minds, and
Hmm.
it is truly a hatred of women and the feminine. And you can go off on feminism all you want, and I already came to that conclusion in my very first book, okay, 15 years ago, that
Hmm.
feminism is harmful. But now, feminism is a scapegoat for everything bad that has happened in the last 100 years to these boys, right? And to
Hmm.
the uneducated, to people that don't want to believe that they have any sort of like culpability in societies. It's all women's fault.
Yeah, I mean, feminism played a huge role in, making a lot of trouble. But yeah, we all played our parts in what happened and is happening. And there are other issues.
Yeah, and you cannot blame this generation of 20-year-old girls for all of the wrong that's happening in the world. So they're going to scapegoat women and use that as an example that they need to be subjugated even harder.
Mm.
And this is what you mentioned Chrislam. Like, that's not a real thing yet, but you just heard the Pope say that every path is the path to God,
Yeah,
right?
so tell us what that means. Say the term again.
Um, Chris,
Chrislam.
yeah.
So what
So
is
it's
that?
basically like a, just a patriarchal religion that takes the form of Christianity but has the draconian laws of Islam. Like,
Hmm.
women have to wear certain clothes, they're banned from certain things. And I had Father Deacon Dr. Ananias on my show, and I was like, how can you promise that if women just like surrender all of their autonomy over to men in a some kind of patriarchy, that they're not going to end up wearing bags on their head? Because that's very easily done. I mean, think about Afghanistan and Iran in the 70s looked like a
Mm.
normal Lebanon, Beirut, these places, they look like Western countries. People were happy, they were smiling, women had their hair uncovered, they wore regular modern clothing. And within just a couple generations, now you can't even go outside and talk as a
Right,
woman.
right.
So I'm not being crazy. Like, this doesn't take thousands of years to happen in incremental, tiny little steps. Like, it takes one revolution, and all women are back to, you know, being deleted from society basically because they have to walk around in a black robe. And so I'm like, how do you um, safeguard against things like that happening? He's like, well, that can't happen in Orthodoxy because we think these things about women. And I'm like, but these boys are entering the church and they have all these other ideas. They have very Islamic ideas
Hmm.
about women, even to the point of like, you can't have a job, or you can't uh, have male friends,
Hmm.
right? Just super crazy. And I don't know, I could talk about this all day, but
Yeah, I guess I have a couple of thoughts. I totally hear what you're saying. And yeah, I saw there was a video of a nun, actually an abbess, on YouTube. And, some of the comments were like, women shouldn't speak. And I just thought, oh dear, like, you really don't understand how this Orthodox thing works, right? But
no.
so there's two different issues, right?
Mm-hmm.
This creeping into the church and like the larger society. Like the larger society question, it's like I don't know. I mean, there's so many things that are going wrong right now, or so many things to be concerned about. It's really hard to know like what's gonna like happen first. I mean, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to say about that. But as far as these ideas coming into the church, I do think that we need to be really clear about the roles of men and women, what they are and what they aren't. Just again restating what the church has already always known, right?
Mm-hmm.
Christianity really did free women from a lot of things. Like that's a real thing. I think actually Father Stephen Damick just had a Presbyterian doctor on who talked about this. It was a very nice conversation. I think some people might listen to that conversation and think they're, maybe talking about being liberal or something, but they're not. They're stating this very fine kind of royal path of what the church teaches about women, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
A wife should be submissive to her husband, a daughter to her father. But that doesn't mean they're walking around with bags on their heads, as you said. Like there's a there's a royal path there, and there are abbesses and female monastics even today um, who guide men through things like that. That happens. I know it in several cases. So women do have their place, and I think we need to be more vocal about what the church actually teaches and has practiced, because it hasn't changed. Well, this doctor explained, she was talking about the early Roman era, maybe before and after Constantine, the changes that happened. Those same exact things are happening now, what she described. So to me, I mean, I think that's the answer as far as dealing with it in the church, being really explicit about we're not feminist, but we're also not misogynist. Like there's a different way.
Right. There's a proper way to do a
Hmm.
patriarchy, and Islam is not it.
Right.
And I have mentioned this, like you said, very many times before. The pagan world was terrible on women.
Mm-hmm.
Christianity was women's liberation, literally, and
Right.
the way that we treat women. Um, because a lot of anti-Christians think, well, if we're just pagan, then women are respected and we're revered for our, womb creating abilities, and people used to worship women. That's not true. Women are weak physically,
Mm-hmm.
so they've always been overpowered. In the ancient world, I mean, they did have some rights, but it was always enforced by men, and it was seen that women were a property, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when Christianity came along, that's when they were elevated to the status of equal with men. I'm not saying we all do the same things. I'm not saying feminist equalities and stuff like. I'm saying in God's eyes, we are just as important.
Yeah, that's like a distinction that people need to be really careful about making every single time. Like when people are saying equal, I always think of that in terms of equal in value, right? Like,
Right. Yeah.
but yeah, different. Absolutely, we're different. Obviously, right? That should be obvious to everyone. I know it's not, but these are two different things. And I think a lot of people are equating saying that we're equal to saying that we're the same. And that's not what a lot of us are saying.
No. But we are equally valuable as children, inheritors of uh, our Father, who's
Hmm.
God. We are not another species.
Or second class.
No, and it's
Yeah.
interesting because if you look at what the word is for helpmeet in Genesis, where God created Eve and said, I will make a helper suitable for him. The word is actually has a lot of rich connotations where they use it other places in the Bible where it actually means like rescuer or someone who like actually helps you out of a jam. So that word is used when God helps Israel sometimes, a help me, a helper.
Hmm.
Someone who fights alongside of you, not who just does your chores, right?
And that's one of the sad things about this whole conversation is, you can see the kind of the demonic influence of pitting men and women against
Mm-hmm.
one another, but really
Mm-hmm.
in a good relationship, in a healthy marriage, you're helping each other. You're actually on the same team. There's not two teams in your marriage. You're working together
Mm-hmm.
towards a common goal, which in Orthodox marriage should be your salvation, the
Right.
salvation
And
of
so
each.
red pill, some of their advice is okay, and I see what they're trying to like make young men not feel so victimized by everything,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Give them some agency, tell them to go to the gym, tell them to eat right, like exercise, get out, stop playing video games, cut the pornography. These are all good things. But then they are also instilling these weird beliefs about like how men treat women. And so we were said a couple minutes ago, like Andrew Tate is the biggest red pill influencer there is.
Hmm.
And then you have all of these mini ones, like Pearly Things says she's the uh, female Andrew Tate, and she's horrible on women.
Yeah.
And all of these things are coming out in this court case, like even from his own mouth. I beat women, I rape them, I manipulate them, I throw them out on the street with no money, I use them pimp. Literally, he's literally a pimp.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the young guys are emulating now, and even some Christian guys saying Andrew Tate's based, and he said that one true thing about immigration one time, and so why are you such a feminist if you don't like pimps? Right? And
Yes, like where do you even start?
he even like slithered into some of the conspiracy spaces. He's been on Alex Jones some, and he's been on Tucker Carlson, and he's been on Candace Owen, and it's like, why do you guys keep platforming a literal pimp who said he likes to take girls' virginity, and he has a course on
Mm-hmm.
how to take a girl's virginity and then dump her.
Yeah, I actually watched the interview with Candace because, some of that was framed as, oh, he used to be bad. He used to do these things, but he's different now. And now he's like gotten rid of all that. But after watching the interview with Candace and listening to some other people, talk about it, I think Tristan, what's his last
Kristen
name?
Haggard.
He did
Yeah.
a really great stream on this. And it's like, oh, this stuff is still going on. Okay. I see.
Yeah.
This is, just trying to whitewash. So I have no idea why these people like Tucker. I usually really like his stuff. I don't know why he's, as you said, platforming the guy. This is pretty crazy. What I don't get is, and maybe this is just because people are, we have so many new people to the church. But again, I always come back to the church, like, has this all figured out. We don't need to
Mm.
go to any red pill people to
No.
figure out how men and women should be and what
Right.
marriage looks like. Like, we don't need it at all. In fact, we have the truth. And why are we just not sharing that with the world?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I
what's
think it's
Andrew Tate going to do for you that the church fathers can't? This is crazy.
because a lot of new converts came during COVID, and that was a very tumultuous time
Mm-hmm.
um, for people's like belief systems, and they're coming from conspiracy backgrounds, so they already have this idea that they know more than everybody, which I've had that myself. It was hard for me to sit through catechumen class and
Mm-hmm.
hear that Bill Gates is a great philanthropist. Okay, but I had to keep my mouth shut because I'm not here to teach. I'm here to learn,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of boys coming into the church do not have the attitude, I'm here to learn, not to teach, because they do know some things.
Mm-hmm.
They do know a lot of like true conspiracies that a lot of priests do not know about, and it's really sad that a lot of priests are out of touch with reality in that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's sad
It
that they were
is.
out of enough to do the COVID thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not blaming them. I'm just saying,
Yeah, depending on their own personal situation of who their bishop was, and like there's a lot of nuance there. So I don't want to
yeah,
get into
and
those weeds a little bit, but yeah,
there.
it was sad. What happened in the church was tragic.
So
Absolutely.
people who are awake and aware are like, why are you following the vaccine? I
Mm-hmm.
don't know that, but the stabby protocol. Why are you doing the mass? Why are you following all this? And so it's very sticky
Mm-hmm.
because the priest has to listen to the bishop, and if the bishop is not aware of all of these things, like he's not a tinfoil hat bishop.
Yeah, I
He's
mean,
not.
there's a lot of really good-natured people out there that were doing their best and continue to do their best, and they don't understand. They really don't. I don't think they're, our enemies or anything. They're just deceived. I really believe
So
that.
So young boys come in all puffed up on their
Mm-hmm.
internet conspiracy red pill knowledge, and now they think they know more than the priest about women. They think they know more than the priest about OnlyFans or whatever they're going through, um, which is nothing new. Like this has all been done under the sun. I mean, the
Yeah,
very first city was a sex cult to the goddess Inanna, right? And the kingship was um, bestowed upon people for the act of sleeping with the prostitute who emulated Inanna. So it's like we know there
that's
are
not a great system of
always going to
government.
be what?
That's not a great system of government.
Oh, and so there's always going to be prostitutes. There's
Yeah,
always going to be pimps. There's always going to be poor women who have fallen down so low that they think that this is their only option, right?
yeah, for a variety of reasons. Yeah.
And there are wicked women, of course, like that is a thing, who love debauchery. But for the
Mm-hmm.
most part, I think all of these young girls just do not have any other influence. They don't have it. They feel like they don't have any way to make the kind of money they can, unless they're on OnlyFans. This is all by design too. I mean, the economy is wrecked on purpose,
Hmm.
right? The economy is wrecked so a man can't support a family on his own, and it's wrecked that a woman can't just have like a regular job and support herself, right?
Hmm.
Do you ever watch old movies?
Oh yeah.
So in old movies, like a young lady could move to New York City and become a little secretary and afford an apartment with a fireplace and like groceries and like everything that she needs with her little part-time job back in the day. But now you can't. Like even as if you had a career as a woman, it doesn't mean that you can afford to live on your own because finances are so bad right now, the economy. But where was I going with that? Oh, women and boys and
Yeah, well, I want to switch to talking about women, but one last thing about the men. When you said that they were being so aggressive with you, in the comments in the
oh
last
yeah.
2 years,
Hmm.
when you said that, my first thought is really like, obviously these guys feel rejected, right? And so
Yes.
let's talk about the
Puppy
woman's
nerve.
side of this, right? But I
Yeah.
do want to say, like, I really feel for both the young men and the young women because they've all been deceived. They've all been trained by being on their phones. This is, the first generation of people that have been online forever, right? They're not ever offline.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of books written on this for parents about the detrimental effects of not just the content itself, but the nature of getting information that way, what it does to your attention, your intelligence, your eyes. There's like such a long list, right? Your
Hmm.
hormones. So, we can hardly blame these young people, right? They live in a world and with struggles that none of us have ever had to deal with before. So I really do feel a lot of sympathy for these guys, but and
Hmm.
girls. But what is happening on the women's side that they need to work on? Why are the guys feeling rejected?
Women need to work on.
Or what are their struggles?
Women's struggles is that they have made it so that loyalty is not a thing anymore. So the red pill will tell you that all men want to cheat, most men will cheat, and this is just a fact of life that you have to accept if you want to not die alone with cats, right? Is you have to accept this betrayal. You have to accept pornography. You have to accept him, looking at women in public. All kinds of forms of disrespect, right? And they're trying to gaslight women into saying, well, if all men are like this, then you have to accept it, right? It's just part of the game. And women are thinking, okay, well, if loyalty is off the table, then this makes all of this something different, right? If I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
expect to put up with betrayals, then I want money. I want my own job because if you're going to cheat, then you're going to fall in love with someone else and leave me. So, I mean, that's just how it goes.
It's all transactional. I mean, that's
Yeah.
right.
I want some kind of insurance that if I have all of these children, you're going to support them and not leave me, right? Um, so now women have to think of this like as a business and not like as a love thing. So everything she's doing now is she wants to be compensated for because it's not out of the love or the goodness of her heart because there is no such thing because he's not loyal.
Hmm. Oh, that's a um, surprising response, actually. I didn't expect it to go that way. But I guess I would start by saying um, I've heard a lot of like feminists talk about, like you hear them talk about all the time about the unpaid work, right, that women do, or the emotional labor, all this stuff, right? So is that what
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about? Is that the same thing? Is that where they're getting it, or they're just because it's two different things to say a woman kind of comes to that understanding on her own through dealing with different men and just realizing, oh, I need to take care of myself. I need to kind of guard myself more.
I need a
Or is
plan
this
B.
like an indoctrination that's been happening, since they were young?
Both because it's like so now you have the trad wife thing is a movement, and you have older women who have lived the trad wife life, coming out saying this is dangerous because I got screwed over and now I'm destitute and I'm 50 years old and my husband took all my kids and gave them to another woman and I have nothing because I have no job history, I have no resume. All I did was raise babies.
Yeah, that's a hard one. This is actually on my list to do a show about child rights because this is my life, right? I have no college degree. I'm
Yeah.
actually a high school dropout, technically,
Hmm.
but I find those
So
videos really disturbing.
you're telling women you have to put your entire life into the hands of a man, all the way down to even like sometimes you can't even have a bank account or your own money or your own income, right? This is the red pill way. This is not the Orthodox way. I
Mm-hmm.
know plenty of Orthodox matushkas with jobs and careers as
Mm-hmm.
doctors. Okay, so talk about the whack right,
Mm-hmm.
right? The freak right. Women have ruined the workplace and they don't deserve to have careers. So,
People are saying that.
oh yeah,
Oh dear.
Candace Owens said that.
Yeah, sometimes it's just hard to know where to start with. Like, there's so much craziness. That's
She
why I
said
love the
women
church.
ruined
There's
the
so much.
workplace. And I was like,
Like,
which workplace? The media? Because that's what you work at.
yeah,
So,
she
okay.
works. I mean, okay.
Yeah. Um, so if you expect a girl to put her entire life into this man's hands, right? He is going to have to be like so responsible and benevolent and humble for her to even get anything good out of that deal and loyal. Because if she puts her life into someone's hands who's disloyal, then she's just destroying herself.
This is according to the world.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in reality, like, if he's going to leave her and cheat on her and, replace her when she's 50, which the red pill advocates for stuff like this. They're saying if she gets fat, you can divorce her. They're saying if she doesn't do this, you can divorce her or leave her or just cheat. They're they're very heavy on the polygyny now and polygamous lifestyle. And this is creeping into Christianity. So now Christian men are saying, "Why can't I have more than one wife?" If that was done in the Old
Like
Testament.
Abraham and yeah.
Yeah. Mormons have more than one wife. Mormon Wives is a big show now on TV, like the Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. And then there was that other one,
Sister
I can't remember,
wives. One.
Sister Wives.
Yeah.
I always laughed at that show because I'm like, dude has four families and they all hate him.
And he's a total narcissist. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, to me, so much of this is like, we'll pick a good guy. Maybe that's harder. Maybe I'm so out of touch. I don't realize how
Mm-hmm.
difficult that is. But at least within the church, find a husband or a wife who has the same goal. I mean, if our goal is salvation, I'm going to say something that is probably controversial. But if your goal is salvation, even if you choose the wrong spouse and that spouse leaves you and the whole thing is terrible,
Mm-hmm.
you can still be saved through that. Like, it's a terrible, tragic thing. But if the point was your salvation, then whatever comes into your life can be used for your salvation. I
It's
mean,
true. What a
it's a
lot
very
of
materialistic way, I guess, is what I'm saying.
mm-hmm.
Um, that these people are thinking. And as Orthodox, we have to be really clear. Like, this life is like really fast. This morning we had the memorial for my mother. She was only 59 when she died 11 years
Mm-hmm.
ago. It's like this life is going to go really fast, and either we believe that there's an eternity or there isn't. Like, you can't have it both ways. So if there's an eternity that you believe you're going to, be a part of, then live like it, right? Like, these things, these struggles, and they are huge struggles. I'm not trying to say they're not, but it doesn't mean all of eternity is wrecked for you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Um, but that's a very deep theology on salvation that not a lot of people are going to know about. So that's like an Orthodox thing. That's not like a cross the board Christian thing. And I like, not I like, there's a wave of Christian posters and influencers that I've noticed that just say the most horrific things. So they are actually anti-influencing people, women especially, from coming to the church. So they're saying, why are a lot of young men joining Orthodoxy and not a lot of young women? Okay,
Oh, this is
because
specific to Orthodoxy.
yeah, but for the church as a whole. So yes, in Orthodoxy, and yes, men are returning to church, women are not, in statistically speaking.
Right, right.
And they're like, well, how come women aren't? Because they're evil. It's like, no, because you made it so unattractive that you turned them all the way off. Like most women I know would love a family and
Mm-hmm.
a marriage, right? I would say 99.9% of women I've ever met in my whole life. I've never met a woman who said, I don't want to get married. Let's just put it that way. Okay.
Yeah.
But now on social media, you've gone and turned women all the way off. That what every woman always wanted, now a lot of them don't even want anymore because you've made it look like drudgery. You've made it look like I am your sex slave. I'm not saying this is true. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying it isn't like this.
Right. That's what the
All
perception they're
Americans married
getting.
is, yeah. But online, it looks like you're a house slave. And
Mm-hmm.
so something just went viral yesterday. It was a man, Christian man with a cross in his bio, not Orthodox, but he's a Christian patriarch man. Just had his fifth child who was a boy. And he posted, I finally have an heir. And he had 4 girls before that. And everyone's like, well, you don't care about your girl daughters. And he posted back, I said an heir, not a dishwasher.
Wow.
And people are defending this. And so this is what Christian men are presenting to the public right now. That women are for dishwashing and making babies and cleaning skid marks off of underwear. And men go to work and do the important things. Okay. And then if you need something, you could just ask me and I can say yes or no.
There is no job, I believe, that is more important, except maybe perhaps the priesthood,
Mm-hmm.
than being a mother. There's nothing, there's no other job that's more important than that. I'll die on that hill, actually.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, there's a lot of drudgery. I've spent, 25 years doing that drudgery. But the glories of being a mother and of seeing your, these little souls that God has given you develop and guiding them, like, and my husband agrees with this, but I've said in another place on my channel that, my husband is a civil engineer. He does very honorable work. He's very good at it, but he designs parking lots. Like, how does that compare to raising and guiding souls to Christ? Like anyone who doesn't value that, I'm sorry, like you don't know what it's all about then. You've drunk the
Yes.
Kool-Aid.
At the same time, they have, yeah, and they told us this in premarital counseling too, that motherhood is the highest vocation there is. And all other jobs are to support her in that role, right?
Mm-hmm.
So society is supposed to be designed to facilitate mothers and motherhood. And the men are supposed to work around that. But now they have made it to such a lowly station, and especially if you're a single mom. So to the red pill guys, like that is you're a pariah if you have a child and you're divorced or whatever. Then you're the scum of the earth, according to them. But so they told women your only value in life is to have a child, but that's not really that valuable because we don't give women anything financially for becoming a mother as a society.
Okay, but speaking for Orthodoxy, right? Like, we're not
Huh.
materialist. Money is there
No,
to serve us. The money is a means to let your family be a family, right? To have a house, to have
right.
the food, right? It's not the other way around.
So I'm saying this in the context of why women don't want to go to church and be submissive, because they've made that role so unimportant. You're just the dishwasher. You're just the laundry person. You're just the
Mm-hmm.
woman. You do woman's work, and the men do the important things. And so this is the message they're sending to all the young women, and they don't want to be a part of it because they don't feel important in that role.
Yeah, and we were sent this message from being a young kid. I mean, I was, a pretty smart little girl, and it was always assumed I would go to college and, do something very important. And the same was with my own children, even though I homeschooled them. When people found out that they did a little bit of college, but when they, didn't continue with that for their own reasons, people, you could see the disappointment on their face because that's what we've been brainwashed to believe for the last 40 years is that you're only worth something if you get educated and you basically live the male paradigm, which is to go out of the house and work. And while I'm not at all against women working, like that's, I'm okay with that. But we have to realize that like mothering, like this is a really glorious thing. We need to bring this back.
Right. If a wife was somehow the position of honor again, a lot of women would want to be one, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not. And so boomers are like have all the wife jokes like my wife this, my wife she's just my wife, like the
Mm-hmm.
ball and chain, blah blah blah. I don't even
Al
like
Bundy.
her. Yes, Al Bundy.
Mm-hmm.
And then in my generation, it wasn't that bad, but it was like if I went out in my 20s and was like, I want to get married and have a family, all the guys would be like, what are you, some kind of grifter? Like, what do you need money for? Are you like a scammer? You just want to have babies?
Are
That
you
was what
a
they,
millennial or Gen Z
yeah,
or
we're
Gen
millennial.
X?
No, we're millennial.
Wow.
And, when we were young, it was like, uh, if you told a man you were marriage minded, he'd be very suspicious. Like, why you can't make your own money?
Really?
Yeah.
See, I'm Gen X. I think we were that last little, and we're young Gen Xers, my husband and I. But I think we were the
Mm-hmm.
kind of the last group of people to like see that as normal. Like, you know, I remember being young and most women stayed home. Like I remember
Mm-hmm.
that. That was a thing.
Yeah. So it's again, you have to woo the women back,
Mm-hmm.
and just how God does to us, and how Christ invites us to the church, and He's there for us, and He's our rock, and He's committed, and He's loyal. That's the only thing that's going to draw women towards Christ in the church is by seeing that you have, you know, virtue, you're loyal, you can be a good, kind spouse and not a cruel, tyrannical dictator. This is a partnership. This is no, not. I mean, obviously, you're the driver, the head, the man of the house, but it's not like uh, indentured servitude. So
Yeah.
that's how they're making it look. And the manosphere is not helping weirdo Christians posting their pride about how their woman does everything they want them to do. And a lot of this, I was thinking about this the other day, it's like a lot of Christian men want to be their wife's idol.
That's a great point. And this is not talked about enough, actually. Yeah, you're absolutely
They
right.
they want to be the one worshipped
Mm-hmm.
like they being God. And so in their mind, they're the God of the house and they want that worship from the wife. They don't want their wife worshiping Christ and pointing out things like, hey, you're mean to me. God said don't do that. Like
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah, as an Orthodox wife, like your husband is not actually number one in your life. Like Christ has to be number one.
right. And so there are instances where you need to be like to your husband, hey, like in a very loving way, but like I disagree with this, or
Mm-hmm.
bring things up that we talk about. They don't always just automatically submit to that's called a sycophant. And that makes people crazy. If you have everybody around you being a yes man all the time, you're going to have delusions.
Yeah, it's not good for
And
either of you.
right.
Right. I had a
So,
young mom, I think she's probably a millennial in the church, married with kids, reach out to me and ask me if I thought that she should do mushrooms with her husband because he was doing mushrooms and she
mhm,
felt like this was being an obedient wife, like she was trying to be obedient. And I'm like,
mhm,
no, please, no, that's not what obedience is. Like, if your husband is asking you to do something against the commandments, like, it's your job to follow Christ first.
mhm,
And by following Christ, you will be a better wife to your husband. You'll be
mhm,
more wise. You'll be more holy, you can nudge your husband in the same way, not nag, but, be his, be a rock that your husband can lean on, and a good advisor. Like, that's what a good woman does. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't go along with, the terrible ideas that your husband, who may be, struggling, comes up with.
And a lot of red pill guys just lie about what women find attractive. I don't know one woman who is attracted to Andrew Tate.
Yeah,
I uh he's repulsive. Okay? The entire ideology and attitude is just ick. And so if this is the type of guys you're emulating and bringing these ideas into the church, you're not going to get anywhere. And it's funny because if I hated men, I would be a red pill influencer. Because this is the type of stuff that makes their lives miserable. This is the type of stuff that keeps them from meaningful relationships and from, bonding and from learning humility and from having joy. Um, and just super neurotic. Like, they're trying to tell men that women only go for this certain percentile of men, like the Chad. Have you heard that?
I've heard
They
that.
only
Yeah.
want um and if that was true, nobody would ever be born because not everybody is walking around that is a 10 Chad, okay? But they're like, well, she'll use you for money and she'll cheat with Chad. Um, so they've created like this generation of hyper neurotic young men who are looking at all the wrong things to attract women. Um, One of them, I played this clip on the show with Father Deacon. He was a big red pill influencer in the UK. He recommends hitting yourself in the face with a hammer
Oh, I saw that.
to break your bones and, you know, sculpt your face into what you think a Chad should look like. So, if you want to not end up hitting yourself in the face with a hammer, log off these red pill MGTOW player game. What is it called? Pickup artists. All of these, but they won't because you know why? Men do not listen to women.
Yeah.
They only listen to. So if you can get a man who'll listen to you to tell another man something, that's the only way. It's the
Yeah, I
only
totally agree. And I
right.
get it. I mean, I actually do understand that. Yeah, I mean, I think there's an element of that that's okay. I mean, we might be right about it, but they need the men to stand up. Like, I'm a real
Yeah.
big believer that young men need older men who are
Mm-hmm.
stable and pious. They need them to step up and show them, not just tell them, but actually
Yeah.
show them what it looks like to be a man. And women need the same thing, which goes back to what you were saying about the church not doing a good job, or maybe I don't know if you were saying the church, but we're not doing a good job inviting the women to church. And I think you're right. And I think with the online Orthodox space in particular, there's a lot of kind of male dominated channels. There's very few Orthodox women online to begin with
Mm-hmm.
making content. And a lot of the channels are debate channels,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm not against at all. They certainly have their place. But I will say that I think that's a very manly way of interacting and of transmitting the faith. I think a
Yep.
lot of women want to hear, the stories of holy women, or they want to see what that looks like. What does your day to day look like as an
Yes.
Orthodox wife or mother? And that's what we're completely failing on, I feel like. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
They want to see women being treated with respect and in a position of honor. Like, think of a beautiful wife with all of her children. Now, you know who is doing this? The Mormons.
Yeah.
Nara Smith is the biggest
Mm-hmm.
supermodel out now. She's always modest. She's a mother. But she's also a fashion model, right?
Yeah, but don't. Okay, I'm going to push back on this a little bit because I know who
Uh-huh.
she is, and nothing against her at all. But don't you think that's a little bit unrealistic and a little bit fake? I mean,
Very.
come on.
It's very unrealistic. So you cannot expect a woman to perform like Nara when she has all of the chores and labors that a normal woman will have. Okay, Nara has a makeup team. She has probably a maid. She probably has
Hmm.
nanny. Lucky helps her with the babies. Okay, I've seen him change diapers. Okay, and so these discourses online get really silly. Like, my husband has never changed a diaper in his in our 10 kids' life. It's like, well, that's kind of crazy. Um, but they still want their wife to perform like Nara, even though they don't have like a tenth of the support that she has, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it looks good. It's aesthetically like, oh, I want to be a wife and mom if it looks like that.
I don't
So
trust it. Maybe it's because I'm Gen X. Like, I know that's not real, but it's
it's
okay.
not real, but it's just like something to aspire to. At least you're not like, making a meal for someone who's making you cry and serving it
Yeah.
to, right?
Yeah.
So there, we all understand there's a balance, but Orthodoxy is interesting because they do have these traditions that seem kind of archaic, like veiling, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So to someone like I'd never been to an Orthodox church before I was interested in joining, so I didn't know about anything. And I went in, and some of them were wearing the veils, and some weren't. And no one ever said to me that I have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
I just started doing it because I wanted to not fit in, but I wanted to do the entire experience of it. Like I wanted to live and be Orthodox, and it was a very beautiful like thing to just put the veil on. But you can't expect inquirers to come in and be like, you have to do this. And even after I was received, no one ever told me, put the veil on or you can't come to church.
Yeah. I don't know that that's a rule. I mean, maybe it's a rule in some parishes, but I would say it's probably pretty few. I only know of
Right,
that being an actual hard rule, like at certain monasteries, not even
right.
all monasteries.
And another thing that was attractive to me about Orthodoxy, no one hit on me at church. I was fully a member and received, and no one had even asked me on a date or anything like that, as a single person. So it was very refreshing to be able to go somewhere and not have to have your guard up against all of, the attention you might get as a young lady. And you're going to get it because you're going to be one of the only girls like of marriageable age visiting that church, and so there might be a group of guys who are gonna like scrap over you, but they're gonna be very respectful about it. Okay, so I never felt objectified. I never felt like no man ever made me feel like he was being inappropriate or flirty. I mean, through
Mm-hmm.
all the friends, all of everybody was just like, wow, okay, this is a place I can just be here and not have to worry about somebody wanting something from me, right? So that's a very refreshing thing for a girl to be able to go into church and not feel like she has to fend off a bunch of suitors at first.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe you are looking for a husband there, but you don't want to be barraged as soon as you walk in the door. So there's one thing. Were we still talking about why is the church unattractive to women?
Or what can the church be doing? You know, I
This,
I really think there needs to be more content out. You know, even like you said, showing family life, just showing that hey, there's a lot of us doing this and we love it. And even if you're not, even if you don't have kids yet, you know, I know I have some dear friends who have had troubles getting pregnant, but like the woman can still be doing things at home. Like there is such a rich life at home, whether it's learning how to sew and to cook and do all the skills. But there's
mhm,
also like you can go visit sick people, you can go visit the elderly, you can like develop all of these relationships with people in your parish. That is so undervalued in our world, and this is why we end up putting our old people in homes, right? And that
mhm,
because we don't value that. But they're like for you spiritually, it's such a good thing to go and sit with an old lady and hear her complain about, you know, how her feet hurt and
mhm.
let her tell you stories of her life. Like you'll be enriched by that. So I think even if women, you know, don't have children yet, like there's still a rich womanly life, not to the exclusion of working, but I'd say, you know, in addition to that she can be
Mhm.
doing. And I think we need to talk more and more about these things. She still
Hmm.
has value to the community.
And that's interesting because you see a lot of women now trying to um, enter the priesthood, like in Catholicism,
Oh, okay. You had me
and
worried for a minute.
discussions about it. You know, at the Orthodox monasteries, like I've seen, discussions and stuff. But
Wait, you've seen discussions about what?
just like women's roles and uh, deaconesses and stuff like
Mm.
that. But there's so much for women to do outside of those three things. I mean, well, you've got a priest, a reader, and a deacon, and those are the only male only
Hmm.
roles, right? Um, and everything else is open to women if you want to jump in and help. But I think a woman who wants to be priest is just wanting to, like, again, put herself in an idol role to be worshipped in that role.
Yeah, I mean, we have to be obedient, and there's theological reasons, obviously,
Yeah.
I don't want to get into, but just by nature of like in our church, we do obedience, right? The clergy
Yeah.
to the bishop, the husband and wife to each other, the woman to the husband in a particular way,
Hmm.
but all of us to Christ and to the teachings of the church. Like this to me is such a no-brainer. And I get
Hmm.
so I'm really sick of just hearing all the videos about women being about head coverings and deaconesses. Like
Hmm.
our lives as women and what we have to offer the church is so rich. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about like go rock some babies in the hospital,
Yeah. What?
or,
Yeah.
pro-life
Anything else?
work. Like there's so much.
Anything else that needs to get done in a church is open to women. So it's not about there's
Hmm.
nowhere to serve, right? There's a million places to serve as a woman. But the only thing that makes having a family worth it, if you're not talking about salvation and salvific acts, is the attitude of the man. So
I don't know if I agree.
I'm saying for like
But explain it,
enrichment of
yeah.
a woman's happiness and fulfillment in life, okay? Uh, the only thing that makes doing dishes worth it or doing the laundry or sweeping or cleaning is his appreciation of that.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree. And I'll tell you why
You
if I
like
can.
cleaning just for cleaning's sake?
I hate cleaning actually. I'm such a bad housekeeper. Um and it takes me forever to do dishes because I don't have a dishwasher. I do it by hand and
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, but here's the thing. I think that's kind of I look at that way of thinking as kind of the kindergarten rules of marriage. In
Mm-hmm.
kindergarten we tell kids, keep your hands to yourself, don't hit anybody, don't take their stuff. Like it's sort of the 10 commandments, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's don't do these behaviors. And I think we get stuck in that way of thinking with marriage of, you know, we've gotten married and we have this contract way of thinking where you're going to do these things for me and I'm going to do these things for you. And if we rub up against each other, you can just say, "Hey, hon, this thing bothers me," and then you just won't do it anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's, I think I thought that way about 10 years into our marriage. But now we just hit 26 years and I look at it very differently now. And it's like, and I don't want to scare anybody, but to get maybe real about marriage is at some point your spouse is going to um, not be able to give you what you need. And you have to be okay with that. Like, it kind of goes back to if you put your spouse first above Christ and expect them to be able to fulfill you, it's a trap for both of you. And ultimately, our relationship with Christ has to come first. He has to fill us. So if we are, struggling with something and we just want our husbands to react a certain way, well, maybe they can't for some reason. Maybe it's their personality or their own baggage or whatever. Or maybe they don't. And that's really hard, right? Like we can get, as women, we can get really upset and angry. But I think we have to learn to allow each other to live freely, to live, to not require certain behaviors from each other as spouses, and to just accept this is where my husband is at, this is where my wife is at.
Mm-hmm.
And I think through that, we actually find a lot of healing and we actually learn to love our spouses on such a higher level. Like, it's not like you do the things that make me happy anymore. It's, I love you in this very deep way, and I'm going to share all of myself with you, even though there's these shortcomings that I find, that hurt, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it happens. It's not just him hurting me. It's actually me hurting him as well. Like, you know, so that's um, it's kind of my take on that. I think you can get by for a few years on the transactional way of looking at it. But I think in Orthodoxy, it's much more about, seeing them for who they really are, and still loving and still accepting them, which is how Christ sees us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Christ never says, like, you have to act a certain way for me to love you. He wants us to act a certain way, right? He wants us to do
Mm-hmm.
the good things, but his love isn't dependent on it. You know, hope I didn't scare anyone, but that's.
I'm just thinking of, yeah, that's a very sacrificial, mature um, attitude, and you're right that your spouse can't, fulfill everything that you need. Only Christ can do that, right? But in the context of like married life and family life and what makes this attractive to young people, um, I mean, so many of the fights that I see, like I spend way too much time reading Reddit and like comments and TikToks about like um, relationships basically because I'm a romantic person. I like love. I like relationships. I like girls. Um, I am one. I defend them. Chores comes up so much
Mm-hmm.
nowadays. Like just basic roommate type respect of how to keep the house. And this is a huge issue, and yeah, it's called now domestic labor,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is a real thing, and it's like an issue that has become an impasse because now um, a lot of men want you to do 50-50 on the bills, but also 100% of the chores. So,
Yeah, that to me is so hard to untangle all that. That's why it's like I think just throw it all on the ash heap and burn it all and start over,
yeah.
and like what does the church tell us? Like, I think that's actually what we need to be doing to the young people, is giving them the vision of the church for marriage. That's what we've totally
Mm-hmm.
lacked in doing. Because as you
Mm-hmm.
said, even among the red pill people, I'm hearing things, I'm thinking, that's not true. That's not what we believe. Because the truth of it, is beautiful. Like, the truth of it is you can actually find peace even if you have a terrible spouse. Like, not just that they leave their crap everywhere, but like if they are never affectionate.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's hard for people to hear, but there are saints that have lived through that. And so if your goal is to be with Christ, your spouse is not, no matter who they are, is not a barrier to that.
Right.
That's reality, right? And I know it sounds like maybe not a good sell, but so far all the, quote unquote good things of the world hasn't been a great sell for these people either. Maybe they need a big bucket of cold water splash, to say no, like, everything you've been told is untrue.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you just try to follow Christ, everything will be okay.
Mm-hmm. And so if we could get a army of suitable bachelors who have, respect for women and treat them in a particular way, you would see so many girls because right now girls can't even find a boy who's not addicted to pornography, right? And
Yeah, I
this is
mean,
the number.
I know a few, both girls and boys, who are doing well, but it's pretty few, and they're in like intensive kind of Orthodox communities is where I
And it
see
has to
them.
be um like dealt with now. It's like literally a thing that you have to deal with because it's going to be everyone's experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're not actively fighting against it, it's going to be in your life. And so this is why a lot of girls are just giving up altogether because like we were talking about before, loyalty If you're not going to be loyal in that way, then all of the foundation, this is just a house of cards, and you'll be blown any which way. And where does that leave me after I've invested my whole life with you, right? So if you can communicate to young women that the men in the church are against this and like actively pursuing to have a life without it, you're going to see a lot more girls being open to this just for that one reason. I promise you. Because they're like, where are the men who don't do this? And like, if you say they're at Orthodox Church, you're gonna have a gaggle of girls there next Sunday.
So we need to do a better job at advertising that part, maybe.
Yes, if you advertise these men have sexual discipline, then you're gonna have your pick of women. Because I kind of made this as a joke on Father Deacon Ananias's show that we did together. At the top of my spider riz joke thing, it was like
Hmm.
sexual discipline because if you want to be a number one Chad 99 percentile hot like commodity high value man, number one is this discipline, and it's going to make you like a million times more attractive to all women.
Yeah, and I think I've heard this advice from other clergy in the church that each one, the boy and the girl, should both be working on themselves. Like
Mm-hmm.
you have to like get your own house in order
Mm-hmm.
if you want to find the spouse. I think Father Josiah Trenham has a talk that he does where he someone told him, it might have been his father, to write down all the qualities he wants in a wife.
Mm-hmm.
And at the very end, he wrote the list out at the very end. He's like, okay, at the top, I want you to write, these are the things you need to work on. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to expect loyalty, then you need to be loyal. If you expect sexual purity, you need to be sexually pure,
Right.
right? If
Yeah.
you want someone faithful, you have to be faithful. Hardworking, hardworking. Like,
Yeah.
the virtues are the same for everyone, even though they are expressed differently, but they're the same for everyone. It's not like a list of womanly virtues and a list of manly
Well,
virtues.
in the red pill manosphere, it is because it's different rules for men
Well,
and
they're
women.
wrong.
I know. I know.
That's the point.
So that's why we were talking about evolutionary biology. Oh, women have to stay faithful, but men don't because it's their biology, they're saying, right? But it's like, well, according to your logic, didn't women also evolve? So don't they evolve to also spread their genes as far and wide as they can? And so if she's ovulating, then it's not her fault that she cheated on you because he had better genes and he smelled better. So can't blame women for just doing what nature intended.
Yeah, I just think they're wrong about,
Well,
everything. I
yes,
think. But you're
it's
right. You're right.
cognitive dissonance. So if you can point out enough of these double standards, and they don't even care that they're double standards anymore. That's how mush brained that
Hmm.
these people have gotten. Is that the male podcaster could just get up there and say anything, and then just like eat it up, even though it's completely contradictory and a bull-faced lie.
Yeah. And I do want to, maybe wrap up this part of the conversation with just saying that I really do feel for these kids because they're not, it's just not it's not only a cognitive dissonance, but there's also, I'm sure, a lot of emotional pain and helplessness on both sides. I mean, if you kind of come away thinking that you're never going to find somebody, like that's a really hard reality,
Mhm.
that's a really hard reality, and one that I think my generation certainly didn't have to deal with. So, um,
And here's where the red pill and the feminism overlap is the victimization.
hmm
Um, and maybe even more so on the red pill side because they're completely helpless. Everything is women's fault. Women brought evil into the world. Eve was a whore. I mean, they've said this. I mean,
wow.
I don't want, that's not my words, that's theirs,
hmm
okay? Um, so they have put their locus of control on the external and not on themselves and what they can do. So they have been completely emasculated by the red pill, saying that women have ruined the world and there's nothing you can do about it because they're all like that. So now you've completely taken all of their power away, and all they can just do is languish in their pornography and hate women. And so how much better is that for men than feminism? It's not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
trying to
There's so
go ahead.
much. There's just so much doom and gloom about the whole thing. I think this is why again and again we have to come back to showing the hope that is Christ and His church. Yes, for our own kind of personal salvation, but also just for society, that all this can be turned around actually really quickly if the young people devote themselves to Christ and to virtue and to
Mm-hmm.
loving each other. This is fixable because there's a lot of broken people out there, people my age that have have gone through similar things. I'm pretty open about this on my own channel about um, a lot of the dysfunction that I lived through as a young person and how that made parenting and marriage difficult for me. So there are a lot of people who have been on this path. I think the difference now is that it's a whole generation dealing with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I think as older Orthodox people, especially maybe more people like you than me, because I'm so old they're not going to listen to me, but I think they're much more likely to listen to people like you, to get out there and to show them, the blessings of marriage. Like marriage is wonderful. Even on a bad day, marriage is so much better than being alone
Mm-hmm.
and, without Christ and without stability in your life.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of times I'll say that the red pill is taking you down three paths. If you continue to take these poison pills, one is um, the gay lifestyle, and the next one is Islam, and the final one is AI girlfriends, sex bots, and virtual sex, right?
Well, two and three seem pretty, I think, more obvious. But could you maybe explain the first one? That's a little less obvious, I think.
Yeah, so you can get an entire generation of young men to hate everything about women and femininity. Um, then you can very easily groom them into coming over to your side of the gay lifestyle. Um, Several big male podcasters have of this red pill have exhibited gay behavior, um,
Hmm. Okay.
saying things like, women's genitals are disgusting, and um, I don't even want a wife that can speak English. Just all kinds of ridiculous women hating rhetoric, okay? And it's interesting because men right now, they don't really have any kind of rite of passage to where they come from a boy to a man. Like a woman, will get her menstrual cycle and, like, okay, now you're an adult, or like you're in this new phase of womanhood, right? But guys don't really have that. In tribal life, they do. They go out and they do the man thing. They come out, you're a man now.
Oh.
But
Mhm.
in the Western world, it's very nebulous. Like, am I a man when I turn 18? Am I a man when I get married? Am I a man when I have a child? Am I a man? I don't know. So they're telling boys that everything feminine is bad. And the only way to be a man is to don't be feminine. And on top of that, if you act like a woman, or then you are like denying your manhood. So being kind is acting like a woman, or being emotional, or doing all of these things have these like feminine traits. But they also say, stop lying like a woman, or stop
Mm.
being a coward like a girl. Don't be a girl. That's the only way to be a man. And so they start out demonizing everything about womanhood and femininity, and then you start to get like, well, men are better, but then you can't pick up women. A guy still wants to have sex, or he wants a connection or whatever. He's not good with women, but all his bros get him, and they like sex, and it's um, it's accepted in society, and we like doing all the same things, and my bros don't care if I play video games for 12 hours straight, and they'll. my gay friend will still have sex with me. So it's like this environment is, I'm sorry, it's very homosexual. The
So
red
this
pill.
is actually happening, you think, or just could happen, or is happening?
Oh, definitely.
Really?
For me,
Okay, that really surprises me because I guess I always think of homosexual guys as being more effeminate, actually. But this is
no,
more of a ancient
it's
Greece
the
kind of thing.
yes, it's
Okay.
the masculine. I'm not gay, bro, but we're still having sex with men because women rejected us.
Wow.
And from there, it's
Which
just
again is going to, especially for a guy that doesn't naturally have that inclination, is going to send him through a whole bunch of emotional and spiritual hopelessness, right? That he's
mhm.
doing something
And
like
I'm
that.
not saying this happens overnight, but whenever you have these male only spaces and exclude women for like large swaths of times, unless it's a monastery or something where they're working it out, it's going to be a very homoerotic environment. I'm sorry, it's just it's just
Mm.
true. Um unless it's like Christian based or like the men in it are straight and Christian. I'm not saying you can't be on a sports team or stuff like that. I'm saying these things that exclude women because they believe that they are evil.
Yeah, I was thinking you have to have that, incorrect mindset, I think, along
Yeah.
with it, not just, a bunch of guys with happy marriages.
Yeah,
They're
I'm not
not going
saying
to, go into this.
okay. I'm just saying these red pill influencers are trying to groom you into this lifestyle. Now, the other one that I talked about, the sex bots, I've been talking about that for years, right?
Mm,
This is coming, okay?
yeah.
Don't think that this is going to be in the future and like we have flying cars and robots. Sex bots are like literally on our doorstep. And this is again just rejecting everything feminine and womanly, um,
And
and being
human. And
and
just,
human,
just
right?
human. Yeah.
So the devil is all about simulacra and what is fake or standing in the place of Christ, right? Antichrist is
What
going
is the
against
word you used?
simulacra,
I don't.
simulation.
Okay.
Yeah. So your sex bot wife, she's gonna be submissive. She's gonna do all the chores without complaining. She's gonna be trad. She's gonna listen to you. So all of these grievances that men have towards women, the sex bot is not going to be any of those, right? Now, I found this website. It's a tool, or it's like a new product. Let's put it that way. It's kind of like a flashlight. It's called Orphis AI, and their tagline is AI women are women. So you can have your virtual girl. Can you see that right there?
Yeah.
You can have your virtual girl, and she goes along with this toy that you use,
Oh dear.
right? And it is connected to the toy, like her virtual AI personalities in the toy. Now, the creator of this wonderful product coming to a store near you, the brief message from our founder. Let me just read it real fast. Ready? What is my side? I'm building an AI girlfriend sex box for the average man who has been rejected by the average modern hypergamous slut. 98% of them rejected. And when I do that, when I say to women, that's okay, the 98% of the men you rejected, I'm going to save them from loneliness and they'll stop bothering you. So this is where he's coming from. The red pill, woman hating, manosphere. Now we have created AI girlfriend who comes along with your handy dandy little tool, and you don't
And
have to worry about women at all.
I mean, the whole thing is so disturbing and demonic. It's hard. Again, it's hard to know where to even start. But I think I would go back to, this is what happens when we're self-centered and not Christ-centered.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if what you're trying to get is pleasure in everything that you want,
Mm-hmm.
of course your marriage isn't going to work out.
Right.
Like, that's not how marriage works, actually. So if you actually want to be happy, this is what our Lord teaches us. This is so basic, right? You're supposed to be denying yourself, which is not a true denial, but an embracing of who you really are. And there's so much joy and peace and everything that these guys and these girls are looking for. That's how you find it. So I
Mm-hmm.
think we have to just be proclaiming this from the rooftops. You don't need AI girlfriend. Like, it's just so incredibly sad for me because the answer is so is really simple.
Hmm.
Like everybody needs Jesus, y'all. Like that's the
Yes.
thing.
I was gonna say something. One last thing.
Was it about the other one?
Oh, it was a okay. Maybe we can end it here because I know we've been going for quite a long time. But in the world, you acquire a spouse to help you achieve all of your goals,
Hmm.
right? That's the worldly way. So you pick a person that aligns with what you want and where you're going. And if they don't match up with that, then you can replace them with someone else who is going to help you get somewhere, right? Attaining these all of these goals that you have. But for us, the goal is the relationship. And all of these things support that. So the relationship doesn't support you getting what you want. You take the resources and your labor and things from the world to support the relationship, not your goals. Does that make sense?
It does, but I still think I think the relationship is a means to Christ. We
Right, because
learn
the
how to love
relationship
Christ by loving our husbands.
is the salvific act.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I mean. So all of that is to support the marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not the marriage as an end in itself, because I think that's actually really important. I'm a lover of rom-coms. I mean,
Yeah.
it's fun, right? But I think we're kind of indoctrinated that way that, you know, the shy, dorky guy who I actually married turned out to be the prince, which he actually did. But, you know, uh, like it's not about that. It's about Christ and our love
Hmm.
for him. And I think if we miss the mark a little bit here, this is part of the problem that we have to be really clear about that. Like your spouse should help you like pick someone who's going to help you get to Christ, actually.
Right.
That's what
Yeah.
actually what I loved about my husband the first time that we started dating. Like he liked me for a while, and like I said, there's about a 13-14 inch difference in our height, and a mutual friend was trying to get us together, and I kept saying, well, he's too tall, he's really tall, like I don't know, and he's kind of dorky and thin, and but there was just one moment. It was actually Forgiveness Vespers, 1996. I know the exact moment. He came over and did a prostration, and there's something that clicked inside of me, and I went, like, this is the guy. Like, this is a really spiritual, kind, gentle, humble guy. Like, he's gonna help me like become more Christ-like.
Hmm.
Um, so I think people need to really think about what they want in life. Do you want somebody who cares what you look like? I mean, we spoiler, we all grow old. Like we're all going to
Yeah.
get there. Like
Yeah.
you want someone you actually like being around, someone who likes you.
Right.
I think we spend way too much time, like all these Chads are talking about, right? Like that they want this and they want that. No, really, everybody just wants someone to accept them and love them.
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of fear with the young people that they're, creating all of these other things that they think they should be looking for or what other people tell them they should be looking for. But ultimately, if you think about the people in your life that you really love, it's the people who love and accept you the way you are. I think
Hmm.
that's like that and, picking a practicing Christian, spouse are the main things.
Hmm.
I'm sorry, I keep derailing you, but
Definitely, I agree with all that. Yeah.
well, I don't know how long we've been talking. I told you I'd watch the clock and then I totally forgot to have a clock in here. So I have no idea how long we've been talking, but I'm sure it's a while.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts, Jamie?
Um,
Or plug your channel too.
yeah, so we talk about sometimes we talk about relationships, but a lot of times we are very just like fact based and not opinion based about global politics and conspiracy theories and just what's going on with um, the election. Jay goes on Alex Jones every week. I went on there last week talking about what were we talking about? Oh, an old paper that I read about uh, cults of the goddess and castration. So go look for that one.
You just did a show on
Yeah.
this? Oh, wow.
There's a entire episode on Rockfin called Goddess and Gala, about that, and then we went on Infowars for about 30 minutes just talking about yeah, cults of these different gender bending goddesses, and how a lot of times they were castration cults. So, and then next time we're going to talk about secret architecture of Washington D.C. So what I like to do is just read books and give book reports. Boom, boom, boom. I throw them out there on Rockfin, and then when we go on YouTube, I usually have a guest, and we talk more about like um, pop culture and what's going on in the media right now. So
That's all great stuff for anyone that, wants to peek behind the curtain. If you haven't already started doing that, really helpful for parents, I think, and grandparents.
yeah.
And what's the name of your channel? Tell us one more time.
You can find it by my name, Jamie Hanshaw,
Okay.
JamieHanshAW, and then the show on there is called Out of This World. And then on Rockfin, you can also find me by my name, and that one is called Defense Against the Dark Arts. And
Oh, was
if
that
you're
the more
in,
serious one you were talking about?
yeah,
Okay,
about
okay,
black magic books and stuff.
okay.
Not for everyone. um, but for your hardcore meat eating conspiracy theorists, will enjoy that. It will answer a lot of questions for you. So
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for being on, Jamie. I had such a fun time talking with you, and
yeah,
I hope we do it again sometime.
anytime.
Okay. Thanks so much, Jamie, and thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye.